Within the soft twilight of memory, where hidden paths quietly bloom, ancient stories gently breathe into being. Over the next 2 hours, let yourself drift into the stories of old photographs tucked away in a quiet cupboard, the son who cleaned his mother's forgotten garden, and the mother who taught her son to ride a bike on a calm afternoon. 3 quiet stories gently woven together. Welcome to Night Feather Sleep Stories. The heavy cardboard box was forgotten on the highest shelf of the hallway cupboard. The bottom of the box was starting to give way, bowed by the weight of hundreds of loose photographs, mixed and piled up over many years. The top flaps no longer closed properly. One of the cardboard edges was torn, letting slip the corner of a black and white image that threatened to slide out and fall to the floor at any moment. The imbalance was evident. All that record was vulnerable, creasing under its own weight, losing color in the slow dust that seeped through the cracks. Maybe this is just another one of those quiet stories, made to help you relax. And sometimes, that's all we really need. Perhaps this is just another one of those tranquil stories, made for relaxing. And sometimes, that's all we need. Helena paused before the open cupboard. She looked at the box and made a simple, definitive decision. This would be the day to give each of those images a safe place. She would take all the photographs out of the dark, clean their edges, mend the tears, and organize everything into new albums with firm pages. No image would be loose again. She lifted her arms and held the box by its sides. The cardboard yielded slightly under the pressure of her fingers. The weight was dense, concentrated. Helena lowered the box slowly, bringing it close to her body to maintain balance. The faint scent of old paper and dry dust accompanied the movement. She walked with short, steady steps to the dining room. The morning light streamed through the large window, illuminating the long, solid wood table that dominated the center of the room. Helena carefully set the box on one end of the table. The cardboard made a muffled sound as it touched the wood. She ran her hand over the bowed lid, feeling the rough, worn texture of the material. The first step was taken. Now she needed to prepare the space for the work to come. She went to the office and returned, bringing the materials she had bought weeks before, waiting for the right moment. She placed 2 large, heavy albums with dark fabric covers on the table. Beside them, she set down a small box containing hundreds of paper mounts to secure the edges of the photos. She also brought a wide, flat brush with very soft bristles and a roll of very thin adhesive tape made specially not to stain the paper over time. Finally, she took a clean cotton cloth and spread it over a part of the table, creating a soft area to support the most delicate images. The table was now divided. On one side, the deformed cardboard box, holding a jumble of sizes and papers. On the other, the empty albums, the tools aligned, the clean space waiting to receive order. The sunlight touched the wooden surface, revealing small golden veins on the tabletop. The atmosphere was silent. Only the distant sound of wind in the leaves of the trees outside broke the quietness of the room. Helena pulled a high-backed chair and sat before the box. She adjusted her posture, feeling her feet firm on the floor. Her hands rested for a moment on her legs. She looked at the workspace, took a deep breath, feeling the fresh morning air fill her lungs, and brought her hands to the cardboard flaps. The work was about to begin. Helena opened the flaps of the cardboard box. The sound of the dry material scraping against itself filled the silence of the room. The scent of old paper grew stronger, a mix of fine dust, old ink, and air that had been trapped for a long time. Inside the box, there was no order at all. Large photographs covered small photographs. Some were upside down, others turned against the bottom. There were folded edges and images slipping into the corners.
She reached out and took the first handful of photographs from the top. Helena's fingers immediately felt the different textures. She pulled the images out of the box and laid them on the cotton cloth spread on the table. The first task was to separate. She didn't look much at the faces or the landscapes. The focus was on the material, the size, the thickness of the paper. Helena picked up the first photo from the pile. It was an old portrait. The paper was thick, almost as rigid as a thin wooden board. The surface was completely matte and had a light brown tone faded by time. She felt the firmness of that piece of paper. With a gentle movement, she placed the image in the upper left corner of the table. That would be the first pile for the oldest and heaviest photographs. Next, her fingers found a smaller photo. The paper was thin, flexible, and the edges weren't straight. They had a wavy cut, full of small, regular curves. The image was black and white, but the white had already transformed into a cream tone. Helena slid her thumb along the wavy edge, feeling the small paper teeth. She created a second pile, a little down from the table, dedicated to these photographs with decorative edges. She continued the movement. Her hand went to the pile on the cotton cloth, picked up an image. Her fingers recognized the texture, her eyes confirmed the type of paper, and her hand took the photo to the right place. The rhythm settled. Pick up, feel, classify, set down. The sound of paper touching wood began to create a cadence in the room. A dry sound for thick paper, a light sound, almost a whisper, for thin paper. Soon she found a third type. They were smaller, square photographs, printed on smooth, glossy paper. The colors were a bit faded, but they still showed sky blues and grass greens. The glossy paper slid easily between her fingers. Helena formed a third pile on the right side of the table. The box seemed endless. Helena plunged her hand deeper. Sometimes two photos were stuck together by the humidity of years past. When that happened, she paused her rhythm. She held the two images with her fingertips and with extreme patience pulled one of them millimeter by millimeter, feeling the slight resistance of the paper until they separated with a small, soft snap. Without hurry, she placed each one in its respective pile. The wooden table gradually disappeared. The piles began to grow and spread out. The sunlight streaming through the window changed its angle, directly illuminating the pile of photos with wavy edges, highlighting the small shadows each curve cast upon the photo beneath. Helena kept her shoulders relaxed. The work was repetitive, but the clarity of the separation brought a sense of relief. The confusion inside the box was diminishing, transforming into small, organized mounds on the table. When Helena's hand touched the rough bottom of the cardboard, she knew the first stage was complete. She took out the last three photographs, small and glossy, and placed them in the third pile. The box was empty. Helena moved the cardboard to the edge of the table. The surface before her was now a map of papers separated by thickness, color, and cut. The chaos had transformed into clear groups, ready to receive the necessary care. With the photographs separated into piles, Helena noticed the thin layer of dust that covered many of them.
Some older images had small spots of dry dirt on their edges. Others, which had remained at the bottom of the box, had curved inwards, creating a canoe shape that prevented them from lying flat on the table. It was necessary to clean and restore flatness to the paper before storing them.
She picked up the wide brush with soft bristles. The light wooden handle was light and fit perfectly in the palm of her hand. Helena pulled the first pile, that of the oldest and thickest photographs, to the center of her workspace. She took the top image, holding it by the edges so not to mark the center with her fingers. With her other hand, she passed the brush over the surface of the photograph. The movement was continuous, from one end to the other. The soft bristles swept the matte paper without scratching. Helena saw a small cloud of gray dust rise into the air, dancing in the sunlight before disappearing. She turned the photograph and passed the brush over the back of the paper. The sound of the bristles rubbing the thick cardboard was a rough, constant noise. The image was clean. The lines of the portrait seemed to become a little sharper, free of the accumulated haze of dirt. Helena laid the clean photo on the cotton cloth. She repeated the gesture with the next one. Hold, sweep the front, sweep the back, set down. The rhythm was slower now. The cleaning required attention. Some photos had small dry cobwebs caught in the corners. Helena used the tip of the brush to gently loosen the threads, pushing the dirt off the edge until the paper was completely free. When she reached the thinner paper photographs, those with wavy edges, Helena Kim encountered the problem of the curves. The paper had dried unevenly, causing the sides to lift from the table. She couldn't force the paper with her hands, or it would create permanent creases. She needed weight and time. Helena slowly rose and walked to the bookshelf on the opposite wall of the room. She scanned her eyes across the shelves until she found what she needed. She pulled out 2 old, heavy dictionaries with thick covers. The weight of the books in her arms was solid. She returned to the table and set the books beside the cotton cloth. She picked up the first curved photograph. With the brush, she cleaned the front and back, removing any hard particles that might mark the image under pressure. Then she placed the photo on the smoothest part of the table. She opened the cover of one of the dictionaries and laid the closed book exactly over the photograph. The weight of the book crushed the curve of the paper against the wood. There was no sound, just the silent pressure of gravity acting on the dried paper. Helena continued the process. She cleaned a curved photograph, placed it next to the previous one, and slid the second dictionary over it. When she found another, she lightly lifted the edge of one of the books, tucked the clean photograph underneath, and released the weight again. The space beneath the books gradually filled with flat layers of paper. The work required patience. The cleaning with the brush was a dry, repetitive caress. The use of the books was an application of contained force. The scent of dust diminished in the room, replaced by the clean smell of the table wood and the cotton of the cloth. Helena felt the tension in her shoulders decrease as the pile of dirty photos shrank. The images now rested clean on the cloth or lay under the firm weight of the dictionaries, relearning to lie flat, preparing for the next stage. While cleaning, Helena had set aside a small group of photographs that needed more than just a brush or weight. These were images that time and careless handling had wounded. Some of them had small tears on their edges. Others showed deep creases where the paper had been folded in half and then unfolded. One of them, a square, glossy photo, was almost separated into 2 parts, joined only by a thread of paper in the center. She pulled this small pile of damaged images close to her. She picked up the roll of special adhesive tape.
It was a small roll with very thin, almost invisible tape, and it didn't have the strong smell of common glue. The tape was made not to yellow or corrode the paper over the years. Helena also took a small metal scissors with fine, sharp tips. She chose the first photograph. It was a black and white image with a 2-centimeter tear on the right side. The paper was slightly lifted where the fibers had broken. Helena turned the photograph face down, exposing the white and slightly yellowed back. She needed to work from the back of the photograph so the repair wouldn't be visible from the front. With the fingertips of both hands, she brought the two parts of the tear together. She moved the paper millimeter by millimeter until the broken edges fit together perfectly, like puzzle pieces. When the line of the tear almost disappeared under her fingers, she maintained pressure with her left hand, holding the paper firm against the table. With her right hand, she took the adhesive tape. She pulled a small piece, a little larger than the tear, and cut it with the scissors. The sound of metal cutting the tape was a quick, metallic click in the silence of the room. She held the small strip of tape by its ends. She took a deep breath to steady her hands and slowly lowered the tape, aligning it exactly over the joined slit. She laid the tape over the paper. With the tip of her index finger, she pressed the center of the tape and slid her finger up and down, smoothing the material. The tape adhered smoothly to the paper. Helena turned the photograph over. On the front, the tear was now just a thin, almost imperceptible line. The image was whole again, firm, without the risk of opening further. She placed the mended photo with those that were already clean. The work continued with the next one. This one had its bottom corner folded back, creating a loose triangle that threatened to fall off. Helena carefully unfolded the corner. The crease was deep, and the paper was weak along that line. She turned the photograph face down. She cut a piece of tape in the shape of a small square. She pressed the folded corner to make it perfectly straight and glued the tape square right over the fold, reinforcing the paper's structure from behind. She lightly ran her thumbnail over the tape to ensure there were no air bubbles. The corner became rigid again. The photo almost split in half required more time. Helena needed to align the entire length of the image. She placed small metal weights, which she usually used to hold down stationery, on both halves of the photo to keep them still. She cut a long strip of tape. The alignment needed to be exact. She lowered the tape little by little, first adhering one end and slowly sliding her finger to the other extremity, joining the two edges of the paper abyss. When she finished, she lifted the photo. It no longer folded in the middle. It was solid. Helena's movements were precise and contained. Cut, align, adhere, smooth. Each repair restored integrity to an image that was on the verge of being lost. The table was covered with small pieces of tape left over from the cuts, but the pile of damaged photos had disappeared. All the images were now whole, clean, and flat. The physical rescue was complete. It was time to give them a definitive place. Helena moved aside the tape remnants and the scissors. The space before her was clean again. She pulled the first album, the largest and heaviest, to the center of the table. The dark fabric cover had a firm texture under her hands. She opened the album. The sound of the spine lightly cracking indicated that it was the first time those pages would be used. The inner leaves were made of thick, matte black cardstock. Between each black page was a sheet of almost transparent tissue paper, thin as a web, made to protect the photographs from friction. She turned the first sheet of tissue paper. The black paper before her was an empty space, a dark background waiting to highlight the images. She decided to start with the oldest photographs, those with thick paper and brownish tones that she had separated first. She picked up the small box with the paper mounts. They were small white paper triangles with an adhesive back and a small pouch in front, designed to fit the corners of the photographs. She pulled the first old photo from the pile. She mentally aligned it on the black page of the album. The contrast between the worn edge of the photo and the clean, dark background was immediate. The image seemed to gain importance there. She picked up one of the small white triangles. She removed the protective film from the back, exposing the adhesive. Carefully, she slid the bottom left corner of the photograph into the small pouch of the triangle. The thick paper fit perfectly. She repeated the process with the bottom right corner, then with both top corners. The photograph now had 4 small white corners attached to it. With both hands, Helena lifted the photograph with the loose mounts and positioned it in the center of the black page. She looked from above, adjusting the tilt until the margins were straight, parallel to the album's edges. When she found the exact position, she pressed the 4 white corners against the black page. The adhesive stuck instantly. The photograph was firm. It wasn't glued, just held by the corners. If one day someone needed to remove it, they would just slide it out. She moved to the next photo. Now she decided to place 2 smaller images on the same page. The process became a silent rhythm. Fit the 4 triangles onto the photo, position the first image at the top of the page, press the corners. Take the second, fit the triangles, position it just below the first, ensuring the space between them was equal. Press. The page geometry was forming. The small white triangles created precise frames around the old images, highlighting the sepia and gray tones against the absolute black of the background. The only sound in the room was the light rustle of the tissue paper sheets being turned and the dull, heavy thud of the black cardstock pages falling one upon another as the album filled. Helena worked with a tranquil posture. She didn't hurry fitting the corners. With each completed page, she lightly ran her hand over the protective tissue paper sheet, smoothing it over the newly installed photos, feeling the small reliefs the paper triangles made under the silk. The album was gaining weight. The left side, with the pages already filled, became higher than the right side. The pile of old photographs on the table diminished until the last image found its place on the last available black page of that block. Helena turned the last tissue paper sheet, closed the heavy dark fabric cover, and ran her open hand over it. The first album was complete. That group of heavy old images was no longer loose in a box. They had a structure, an order, and a background that held them firmly. Helena moved the dark, heavy album to the left corner of the table. The central workspace was clear again. She pulled the second album towards her. This one had a light sand-colored cover with a smoother texture. Upon opening it, the pages revealed themselves to be different from the first. They were thick paper sheets, but cream-colored, and didn't need the small adhesive corners. Each page had horizontal strips of very thin, transparent plastic, forming straight pockets where the photos could slide in and be protected. The pile remaining on the cotton cloth consisted of the newer photographs. They were colorful images printed on smooth, glossy paper, most in standard rectangular format. There were also the photos with wavy edges that she had taken from under the dictionaries. All were clean, flat, and ready.
Helena picked up the first color photo. The glossy surface reflected some of the light from the window. She aligned the bottom edge of the photo with the opening of the first transparent pocket on the cream page. With a light pressure from her fingers, she pushed the image inside. The smooth paper slid through the plastic with a soft sound, a continuous low hiss, until the photo reached the bottom of the pocket and stopped. The plastic covered the image, giving it an extra sheen and protecting the surface. She picked up the second color photo and repeated the movement in the adjacent pocket. Slide, push, align. The process was more fluid and faster than using the adhesive corners. The cream page soon filled with 3 horizontal photographs. The colors of the clothes, the blue of the sky and the images, and the green of the trees came alive against the light background of the paper. Helena turned the page. The thick paper made a firm sound. She continued the work. She grouped the photos simply. If she picked up several images of a beach, she placed them all on the same page. If she found photos of heavy coats and snow, she filled the next sheet with them. The organization did not require exact dates, just the visual coherence of what the images showed. The logic arose from the content itself. With each photo that slid into the plastic, the pile on the table visibly diminished. The white cotton cloth began to show more and more. Helena maintained the rhythm. The sound of the smooth paper sliding into the plastic became the sonic signature of that afternoon. The light coming through the window had changed. The sun no longer directly illuminated the table. The light was now diffused, softer, spreading a uniform clarity through the dining room. She reached the photographs with wavy edges. As they were of varied sizes, Helena chose pages at the end of the album that had larger pockets, covering the whole sheet. She opened the transparent plastic from the top corner, lifting it like a protective film, positioned the photos with decorative edges on the cream paper, arranging them side by side without touching. Then she released the plastic, which adhered back to the page, sealing the images in place. The curves of the edges remained perfectly visible, securely held. Helena's hand went to the table and found only the cotton cloth. She looked to the side. There were no more piles. There were no more loose photos. The last image, a small portrait of a house with a garden, had just slid into its transparent pocket. Helena smoothed the last page with the palm of her hand, feeling the smooth surface of the plastic over the paper. She closed the light-covered album. The two ends of the table now told a different story than the beginning of the day. The torn cardboard box was empty, useless in the corner. The cotton cloth was clean. The tape remnants and scissors were put away. In the center of the wood, only the two thick albums rested. The work of construction was finished. Chaos had completely been absorbed by order. The table was organized. Helena slowly rose, stretched her back, and walked to the end of the table to pick up the empty cardboard box. She folded the torn flaps inward, crumpled the weak bottom, and took the box to the utility room, leaving it with the papers for disposal. The dead weight of that container would no longer be part of the house. She returned to the room, folded the cotton cloth, put away the brush and the small box of mounts.
When she returned to the high-backed chair, the table displayed only the two albums, one dark and one light, resting on the polished wood. The silence in the room was different now. There was no longer the promise of work, nor the tension of disorder. There was only the presence of those two thick spines.
Helena pulled the dark-covered album closer. She didn't want to add anything more, nor arrange anything else. She just wanted to see what she had built. She opened the heavy cover. The first tissue paper sheet lifted slightly with the movement of the air, revealing the black page. There was the first old photograph, held by the four small white corners. Helena looked at the image. Without the dust, without the creases, the photo no longer looked like a forgotten piece of trash. It looked like an important document. The margins were perfectly straight. The sepia contrast with the dark background gave a new depth to the paper. Helena turned the page by the bottom corner, holding the thick paper between her thumb and forefinger. The second page revealed the two smaller photos, aligned symmetrically. She saw the small repair she had made on the edge of one of them. The adhesive tape was invisible from the front. The image looked whole, healed of its small wound. Helena continued turning the pages. The sound of the thick paper and the soft rustle of the silk filled the air. With each sheet that fell to the left side, she saw the progression of her care. The edges were no longer curved. The dust no longer obscured the gray tones. The rigorous geometry of the white triangles created a constant rhythm, a frame of security that repeated page after page. When she finished the first album, she closed it gently and pulled the second one. The light cover opened easily. The cream pages showed the colored photos under the smooth plastic. The material's sheen reflected the faint light still coming from the window. Helena ran her fingertips over the plastic, feeling the continuous surface without encountering the loose edges or slippery paper from before. The images were secured, organized by colors, by places, by moments. The blue of the sky on one page, the green of the trees on the other. The photographs with wavy edges rested flat and protected at the end. The visual journey from chaos to order was complete under her hands. She didn't linger on the faces or try to recall the names of distant places. Helena's contemplation was about the material. She looked at the solidity of the pages, the cleanliness of the margins, the absence of tears and folds. The vulnerability of those hundreds of pieces of paper had disappeared. They no longer crushing each other in the dark. They had space to breathe, surface to rest on, and protection against time. Helena closed the second album. She placed both open hands on the light cover, feeling the thickness of the full book. The volume under her hands was a physical proof of the time spent that afternoon. The wooden table seemed larger now, free of confusion, supporting only the result of work done with patience and silence. The room's light began to fade, signaling that the day was drawing to a close. Helena picked up the dark album with one hand and the light one with the other. The combined weight of the two books required firmness in her arms. She lifted them from the wooden table, feeling the perfect balance of each volume. With calm steps, she left the dining room and walked to the adjacent living room. The wooden floorboards creaked lightly under her feet, a familiar sound that accompanied her path. In the living room, there was a low, solid wood bookshelf leaning against the wall opposite the window. The middle shelf was partially empty, having long waited for something to fill the space.
Helena paused before the furniture. She looked at the box and made a simple, definitive decision. This would be the day to give each of those images a safe place. She would take all the photographs out of the dark, clean their edges, mend the tears, and organize everything into new albums with firm pages. No image would be loose again. She lifted her arms and held the box by its sides. The cardboard yielded slightly under the pressure of her fingers. The weight was dense, concentrated. Helena lowered the box slowly, bringing it close to her body to maintain balance. The faint scent of stored paper and dry dust accompanied the movement. She walked with short steps. She slid the first album, the dark-covered one, onto the shelf. The sound of the fabric brushing against the wood was continuous and dry. The book stood upright, leaning against the side of the bookshelf. Next, she positioned the light-covered album beside the first. She slowly pushed the book until its smooth cover touched the dark cover. The spines of the two albums were perfectly aligned with the edge of the wooden shelf. She released the books and straightened her body. She took a step back. The albums were there, solid, vertical, occupying the space with authority. There was no longer risk of them creasing. No more dust was falling on loose images. They seemed to belong on that bookshelf, integrated into the room's furniture, as if they had always been there. The late afternoon light streamed through the living room window. It was an orange light, touching the floor and reaching the lower part of the bookshelf, illuminating the spines of the newly stored albums. Helena stood still in the center of the room. Her arms rested along her body. She felt a slight fatigue in her shoulders and hands, the good weight of someone who used her body to put something in order. She didn't sit down. She remained standing, her feet firm on the wooden floor, feeling the pleasant temperature of the room. The atmosphere was in absolute repose. The sound of the wind outside had ceased. The air inside the house was clean, free from the old paper and stale dust. Helena looked at the bookshelf once more, observing the perfect alignment of the books under the slowly dimming light. The house was quiet, and the constructed order rested in silence. The backyard behind Tiago's mother's house had lost its definition. Last autumn and the summer rains had created a thick blanket of neglect over the space. Dry leaves entirely covered the stone path that led from the patio to the back wall. The bushes, once round and contained, now stretched long, unruly branches in every direction, blocking the light that used to hit the kitchen window. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense that the garden was suffocating under its own growth and the accumulation of seasons. Perhaps this is just one more of those tranquil stories, made for relaxing, and sometimes that's all we need. Maybe this is just another one of those quiet stories, made to help you relax. And sometimes that's all we really need. Tiago stopped at the back door, holding a mug of warm coffee. He looked at the brown of the dead leaves and the dark green of the weeds that grew unchecked near the base of the walls. The imbalance was silent yet evident. The garden needed to breathe again. His mother, her steps slowed by age, could no longer maintain the order of that space as she once did. She looked at the backyard with a mix of affection and weariness. Tiago took the last sip of coffee. The liquid went down with a comforting warmth. He decided that day would be dedicated to restoring clarity to that patch of land. He left the empty mug on the kitchen table and walked towards the small tool shed that stood in the corner of the property. The wooden door of the shed was slightly stuck. Tiago gripped the cold metal doorknob, pulled with a little force, and the door gave way with a short creak. The smell of old dust, dry earth, and stored wood greeted him. It was a familiar scent, an aroma of paused work. Inside, the early morning light streamed through a crack in the roof, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Tiago searched the middle shelf. He found a pair of thick canvas gloves. The fabric was stiff from disuse. He put on the right glove, adjusting the fingers, then the left. The friction of the canvas against his skin brought the first tangible sense of the work that was about to begin. He clenched his hands into fists a few times, softening the thick fabric, feeling the protection they offered. His silent promise was made. By the end of that day, the stones would see the sun again, the earth would be clean, and the garden would find its center once more. He picked up a hard-bristled broom, the kind made for sweeping streets and rough concrete. The wooden handle was smoothed, polished by the touch of many hands over the years. Tiago weighed the broom in his hand, feeling the object's balance. He left the shed and returned to the start of the stone path, right near the porch steps. The early morning air still carried a damp coolness, that light chill that precedes the warmth of full sun. There was no wind. The neighborhood's silence was broken only by the soft sound of Tiago's own steps upon the carpet of dry leaves. Each step produced a crisp sound, a soft crackle under the soles of his boots. He stopped, planted his feet on the ground, gripped the handle of the broom with both hands, and looked at the expanse of the path. The work was there, waiting for him, simple, direct, and necessary.
The broom's first sweep against the ground produced a harsh, dry sound. The hard bristles scraped against the invisible stone, pushing a mass of brown leaves, thin twigs, and loose earth forward. Tiago pulled the broom back and repeated the motion. Scrape, push, lift. The rhythm quickly established itself. With the third movement, a gray patch appeared on the ground. It was the first stone of the path, revealed after months of being hidden. Its surface was slightly wet and dark, holding the night's moisture beneath its leaf cover. Tiago advanced a step. He had no hurry. The goal wasn't to finish quickly, but to clean with care. He positioned the broom further to the right, near the edge of the path, where the garden bed soil met the stone. There, the leaves were damper and stuck to the ground. The effort required a little more strength in his arms. He pressed the bristles down and pushed. The damp mass yielded, rolling over itself and joining the main pile that was beginning to form in front of him. The sound of sweeping became a constant beat in the backyard. It was a sound of friction, followed by the rustling of dry leaves piling up. With every meter Tiago advanced, the gray path lengthened behind him. The difference between the clean space and the dirty space was a clear line on the ground. Where he had already passed, the irregular stones showed their contours, separated by thin lines of compacted earth. Where he had not yet reached, brown dominated everything. A faint smell of wet earth and decaying vegetation rose from the ground as the protective layer of leaves was removed. It was an organic scent, dark and rich. The fresh morning air began to dry the surface of the newly discovered stones. The dark gray color slowly lightened, becoming a pale gray under the rising sun in the sky. Tiago continued the movement. The pile of leaves in front of him grew, becoming heavy. He needed to use his whole body now, bending his knees slightly and using the weight of his shoulders to push the pile of vegetation. He felt the heat begin to form under his cotton shirt. The muscles of his back stretched and contracted in rhythm with the broom. He paused for a moment, rested his chin on his hands atop the broom handle, and took a deep breath. His mother appeared at the kitchen door. She said nothing, just held a dish towel in her hands. She looked at the stretch of path that was already clean, then looked at Tiago and smiled faintly. It was a smile of recognition. Her son returned the smile, a simple gesture with his eyes, and went back to work. He began sweeping again. When he reached the end of the path, near the back wall, the pile of leaves was knee-high. He leaned the broom against the wall. The handle of the wood hit the brick with a hollow sound. Tiago went to the shed and brought a metal rake and a large green canvas basket. With broad, calm movements, he used the rake to pull the leaves and fill them into the basket. The metallic sound of the rake's teeth scraping on the stones was sharp, but not unpleasant. He pressed the leaves down inside the basket with his gloved hands, feeling the brittle texture yield under his weight. The smell of dry dust rose, making him blink a few times. He repeated the process until no leaves remained on the ground. The entire path from the porch to the wall was visible. The stones formed an irregular pattern, like a gray river cutting through the backyard. The space already seemed larger. The removal of that dead layer restored depth to the ground. Tiago dragged the full basket to a corner, took off his gloves for an instant to wipe the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, and looked at the clean stones. The first step was done. With the ground clean, Tiago's gaze rose to the sides of the backyard. Along the wall on the left side, a row of bushes had grown chaotically. The upper branches curved downwards under their own weight, while the side branches encroached upon the path space he had just cleared. The bush leaves were small and a very dark green, almost black in the shadier parts. The mass of vegetation was so dense it prevented air circulation and blocked the light that should have warmed that part of the property. Tiago went to the shed and picked up a pair of pruning shears. It was a heavy tool, with long metal handles and thick curved blades. The central mechanism was a bit dirty with dried sap, but the spring was still firm. He tested the shears in the air, opening and closing the handles. The metallic sound of the blades crossing cut the silence, a dry, precise click. He walked to the first bush in the row. He put his gloves on again. The thick fabric protected his hands as he gripped a rebellious branch that jutted forward. The branch was firm, covered by thin brown bark. Tiago positioned the shears blades near the base of the branch, where it met the main trunk of the bush. He applied force to the handles. The wood resisted for a fraction of a second before yielding with a clean snap. The branch fell at Tiago's feet. At the cut, the inner wood appeared light, almost white, damp with sap. A strong, fresh smell of cut green filled the air around him. It was a sharp, vibrant scent, completely different from the smell of earth and dry leaves before. Tiago picked up the cut branch and threw it behind him, forming the beginning of a new discard pile. He continued the work. The process required observation. He didn't cut randomly. Tiago stepped back, looked at the bush's shape, identified which branch was breaking the harmony or blocking the growth of others, and then moved in to cut, step by step, click by click. The sound of the shears became the new time marker in the backyard. Some branches were thicker and required him to use both hands on the shears handles, squeezing hard, feeling the tension rise through his forearms until the wood finally split. Others were thin and flexible, falling easily. With each cut, the bush lost volume but gained definition. The mass of leaves transformed into a rounded, contained shape. As he moved along the row, something in the environment began to change. The removal of the upper branches opened space above. The sunlight, which previously stopped at the barrier of leaves, now passed straight through. A golden ray of light hit the earth ground near the wall, illuminating a patch of the backyard that lived in shadow. The air seemed to circulate more easily. Tiago felt a light breeze touch his face, coming from the space he had just cleared. He spent almost an hour at this pace. Cut, pull the branch, throw it on the pile. Sweat now ran down his back continuously. His gloves were stained of green and brown marks from the sap and bark of the plants. When he reached the last bush, the pile of branches on the ground was immense. He made the last cut, a branch that scraped against the roof gutter. The final snap sounded. Tiago stepped back a few paces and looked at the expanse of the wall. The row of bushes was now uniform. They no longer looked like a solid wall, suffocating, but rather individual plants, breathing, with space between them. The sunlight bathed the entire side of the backyard. The remaining leaves looked brighter under the newly discovered clarity. The smell of fresh sap hung strong in the air, a clear sign of renewal. He lowered the shears, feeling the weight of the tool in his right hand, and let his shoulders relax. The form had been restored. Below the newly pruned bushes, a long earth garden bed stretched where Tiago's mother used to cultivate smaller plants. With the sunlight now bathing the space, the state of the garden bed became evident. The earth was covered by a dense network of weeds, creeping ground cover, and small invasive plants that had stolen space from the main roots. The few original plants that survived seemed squeezed, surrounded by thin leaves and intrusive stems. Tiago set the heavy shears aside and retrieved a small, dense foam mat from the shed. He placed the mat on the ground right at the edge of the garden bed and knelt upon it. The foam yielded under the weight of his knees, offering the necessary comfort for a task that would require time and closeness. He was now at ground level. The smell of the earth was very close to his face. The work of cleaning the garden bed couldn't be done with large tools. It required hands. Tiago wore his gloves, but felt the need for a more precise touch. He took off the glove from his right hand, preferring to feel the texture of the roots and earth directly on his skin. He reached for the first clump of creeping weeds. With his fingers, he gripped the base of the plant flush with the soil and pulled slowly. The earth was a bit compacted. The plant offered resistance. Tiago didn't pull all at once to avoid breaking the stem and leaving the root behind. He made a gentle levering motion, rocking his hand from side to side. The earth began to yield. A subtle sound of thin roots snapping and sliding through the earth could be heard. With a final gentle tug, the entire plant came out in his hand. The roots were covered with small clumps of dark earth. He shook the plant lightly, letting the good soil fall back into the garden bed, and tossed the weed into an empty bucket beside him. He repeated the process. His bare hand came in contact with the cold soil. The earth's temperature was surprisingly cold compared to the sun-warmed air. The texture varied. In some places, the earth was loose and sandy, sifting through his fingers. In others, near the stones, it was wet and clayey, clinging under his nails. The progress was much slower here.
Tiago needed to be careful not to pull out the sprouts of the true plants. He found a small mint seedling choked by tall weeds. With his fingertips, he pushed aside the invasive stems, isolated the mint, and removed the surrounding weeds with surgical precision. When the space around the mint was clean, the mentholed, sweet scent rose into the air, mingling with the deep smell of the turned earth. He advanced on his knees, dragging the foam mat and the bucket little by little. With each cleaned section, the dark earth lay exposed, turned and fluffy. The surface, once a green and yellow confusion of shapeless weeds, was now clean, prepared soil. The plants that remained suddenly seemed larger, freed from competition. The bucket filled quickly. Tiago had to empty it twice into the discard pile. His back ached slightly from the bent posture, but the steady rhythm of the work brought a kind of steady calm. Pull, shake, discard. The sound of the earth falling back into the garden bed was soft, like a continuous whisper. When he reached the end of the garden bed, his hands were dirty with earth up to his wrists. His fingertips were slightly numbed from the repetitive effort. He stood up slowly, stretching his back and feeling his vertebrae softly crackling. He looked down. The garden bed was now a long strip of black, rich earth with small green plants harmoniously spaced. The base of the garden was it finally clean and ready to nourish what mattered.
Near the back wall, there was a small wooden structure, a grid-shaped trellis, where a white-flowered climbing plant used to ascend. Over time, strong winds and the plant's weight had caused the trellis to give way. It leaned forward, almost falling onto the stone path. Some of the nails holding the slats had come loose, and the old wood looked tired. The climbing plant, without firm support, grew in a tangle on the ground. Tiago wiped his hands on his work pants and went to the shed once more. He brought a wooden-handled hammer, a handful of new nails, and a roll of sisal twine. The hammer had a solid, familiar weight. The metal head was worn at the edges, marking years of small repairs around the house. He approached the trellis. The wood was gray and rough from sun and rain. Tiago held the side of the structure with both hands and gently pushed it back, trying to return it to a vertical position. The wood groaned in protest, a long, drawn-out sound. He had to use his legs, pushing the structure against the wall. When the trellis finally rested against the wall, leveled, he held it with his left shoulder. With his right hand free, he took a nail from his pocket. He positioned the sharp point of the nail over the junction of two loose slats. The first tap of the hammer was light, just to fix the nail in the wood. A dry thwack. The old wood accepted the metal point. Then he raised the hammer a little higher and struck firmly. The metallic sound of the impact echoed through the backyard. 3 strong blows, and the nail sank completely, joining the pieces. He repeated the action at the points where the structure was weakest. The sound of the hammer created a new rhythm. The impact transferred a slight vibration through the hammer handle to Tiago's hand. The metallic smell of the new nails mingled with the dry smell of old wood being pierced. Each nail fixed, the trellis gained stability. When he finished nailing, he released the weight from his shoulder. The structure remained straight, firm against the wall. The next step was to care for the climbing plant. The climbing plant lay fallen, its long green stems spread across the earth. Tiago picked up the roll of sisal twine. The strand was rough, full of small fibers that lightly pricked his skin. He cut several short pieces with small scissors. With extreme delicacy, he knelt and picked up the main stem of the climbing plant. The plant was light, but the stems were fragile. He lifted the stem from the ground, feeling the leaves brush against his arms. He leaned the stem against the lowest part of the wooden trellis.
Using a piece of twine, he tied a loose knot, securing the stem to the slat without tightening too much, allowing the sap to continue circulating. He moved upwards, guiding the climbing plant's branches along the wooden grid. The work required patience. He unwound the stems that had tangled on the ground and distributed them across the trellis. Each twine knot was made with care, his fingers working with precision to loop the rough twine around the delicate green. When he finished, Tiago took a step back. The climbing plant was no longer fallen. It now covered the gray wood with a pattern of green leaves and small, closed white buds. The structure, once a sign of neglect, was now a vertical point of life at the back of the garden. The contrast of the rustic wood with the fresh leaves brought an immediate sense of care and order. The rustic twine held the plant with gentle firmness. The repair was done, silent and lasting.
The sun had already passed its highest point in the sky, and the light began to take on a slightly warmer hue, leaning towards late afternoon. The garden was clean. The leaves had vanished, the bushes were contained, the earth was turned, and the trellis was firm. All that remained was to wash away the day's effort and settle the invisible dust that hung over the surfaces. Tiago went to the faucet attached to the outer kitchen wall. A green hose coiled on a metal holder was connected to it. He unrolled the hose, pulling it along the stone path. The heavy rubber dragged across the ground with a dull thud. He walked to the back of the backyard, holding the plastic nozzle, and returned to open the faucet. Water hissed through the pipes. The hose on the ground twitched slightly, gaining volume as the pressure inside increased. Tiago gripped the nozzle and squeezed the trigger. A strong, continuous jet of clear water shot out. He started with the stones. The jet of water hit the first stone of the path with force, spraying drops in all directions. The sound was loud and refreshing, a constant hiss of water breaking against a hard surface. The water washed away the thin layer of dust and earth that the broom couldn't remove. Immediately, the color of the stones changed. The pale, dry gray transformed into a dark, deep, and shining gray. Tiago walked slowly backward, sweeping the path with water. Earthy, dirty water ran down the sides, seeping into the adjacent garden beds. Where the water passed, the cleanliness became absolute. The path looked freshly laid. The smell of wet stone rose strongly in the air. It was a clean, mineral scent, reminiscent of the first drops of a summer rain hitting hot asphalt. When he finished washing the path, he changed the nozzle setting. With a twist of the plastic tip, the strong jet transformed into a fine mist, a soft, open shower. He turned the hose towards the newly cleaned garden beds. The water fell upon the turned earth like a gentle rain. The sound changed from an aggressive hiss to a delicate rustle. The black earth, which was loose and dry on the surface, absorbed the water instantly. It didn't form puddles, it drank all of it. The earth's color darkened even further, taking on a strong coffee shade. The smell of wet earth, the petrichor, spread through the backyard, dense and welcoming. It was the scent of life being nourished. Tiago moved his arms slowly, watering the pruned bushes. The green leaves, previously covered by a thin layer of dust, now shone under the water. Gops accumulated on the leaf tips and fell heavily towards the soil. He watered the climbing plant on the repaired trellis, washing the old wood and moistening the roots at the base. The temperature in the backyard dropped noticeably. The water mist cooled the air around. The sweat on Tiago's face and arms began to dry with the fresh breeze that formed. He stood still for a few minutes, just moving his wrist from side to side, watching the water fall and transform the environment. The sound of water hitting the leaves was the sound of thirst being quenched. The entire garden seemed to sigh under the fresh bath. He released the nozzle's trigger. The flow stopped. Silence returned, but now it was a damp silence, punctuated by the sound of solitary drops falling from the leaves to the earth.
His mother went back inside the house, leaving the kitchen door ajar. Tiago began to gather the tools. He picked up the pruning shears, the hammer, the foam mat, and the empty basket. He walked slowly to the tool shed. The inside of the shed was already dark, illuminated only by the faint light coming from the open door. He put the hammer in the metal box, hearing the soft clinking of tools bumping together. He took an old cloth and cleaned the pruning shear's blade, removing the remnants of sap and earth before hanging them on the wall nail. The foam mat was leaned against a corner. Lastly, he took off the canvas gloves. The fabric, stiff that morning, was now pliable, molded by the shape of his hands and marked by the work. He put them on the shelf. His bare hands were slightly rough, with small traces of earth under his nails and a faint smell of iron and foliage clinging to his skin. He stepped out of the shed and closed the door. The creak of the hinge was the only sound. Tiago walked to the outdoor faucet. He opened a thin stream of water and washed his hands. The cold water ran over his fingers, washing away the fine dust. He rubbed his palms slowly, feeling the thermal relief of the water on his tired skin. He closed the faucet and dried his hands on his pants. The sun finally vanished behind the back wall, taking with it the golden light and leaving in its place the dark, soft blue of early evening. The shadows dissipated, and the garden took on a uniform, restful hue. The heat of the day dissipated completely, replaced by the fresh, still air of twilight. Tiago walked to the porch and stopped at the top of the steps. He leaned his shoulder against the wooden pillar of the porch roof. He had no hurry to go inside. He looked at the darkness that was beginning to fill the backyard. The stone path still gleamed faintly with the remaining moisture. The outline of the bushes was perfectly drawn against the white wall. The smell of wet earth remained present, firm and constant. There was nothing left to do, nothing to fix, nothing to cut. The effort had transformed into order. Tiago's body relaxed against the pillar, his weight supported by the wood. His breathing became slow, matching the rhythm of the garden now preparing for sleep. He remained there, motionless in the gloom, simply existing in the silent, clean space his own hands had revealed. The child's bicycle stood in the corner of the garage, resting on its two small plastic training wheels. The white plastic was scratched at the edges, marked by asphalt from many short sidewalk rides. Helena observed the bicycle in silence. A subtle imbalance was there. The training wheels no longer touched the ground simultaneously. When the bicycle leaned right, the left wheel hung suspended. When it leaned left, the right wheel spun idly. The boy had grown enough to shift his weight and find his own center, but the rigid plastic prevented him from finding that exact balance point. The bicycle seemed stuck to the ground, limited, waiting for freer movement. Maybe this is just another one of those quiet stories, made to help you relax. And sometimes, that's all we really need. Perhaps this is just another one of those tranquil stories, made for relaxation. And sometimes, that's all we need. Helena made her decision. The afternoon was clear, the air mild, the moment arrived. She walked to the wooden shelf at the back of the garage and pulled out the toolbox. Its metal clasp made a dry sound as it opened. The scent of stored iron and lubricating oil rose faintly. She pushed aside screwdrivers with her fingers, feeling the cold weight of the tools until she found the right-sized wrench. The wrench's smooth metal fit perfectly into her palm. She knelt beside the bicycle's rear wheel. The black rubber tire gave off a faint scent of dry dust. Helena fitted the wrench onto the hex nut securing the first metal rod. The fit was firm. She applied a little downward force. The nut resisted for a second before yielding with a short creak. The metallic sound echoed through the garage walls. She turned the wrench a few more times, feeling the metal thread slide looser until she could finish turning the nut with her fingertips. The metal piece dropped into her hand, cold and heavy. With the nut removed, Helena pulled the training wheel's rod. The steel piece slid off the axle and came completely free. She repeated the process on the other side. The wrench met the nut, force broke initial resistance, her fingers finished the job. The second training wheel was removed, placed on the cement floor beside the first. The sound of hard plastic touching the ground marked that stage's end. Without side supports, the bicycle immediately leaned. Helena held the synthetic leather seat with one hand, feeling the soft texture, and pulled down the metal kickstand with her shoe's tip. The bicycle rested on the thin rod, standing on its own. It looked different now, more slender, lighter, ready to move anew. The dark blue metal frame reflected light streaming through the open garage door. Lucas appeared at the house door. He wore comfortable sneakers, looking at the bicycle with curiosity and respect. He noticed the absence of the white plastic wheels. The empty space near the rear axle changed the object's entire silhouette. Helena looked at her son, then at the bicycle. The garage air seemed quieter. A silent promise hung in that afternoon, a promise of movement, learning, a transformation happening gradually at the rhythm of wheels on the earth. Helena put the wrench back in the toolbox, closed the metal lid, and walked to the bicycle, holding the handlebars by the black rubber grips. The material yielded slightly under her hand's pressure. It was time to go. Helena pushed the bicycle out of the garage. The soft rubber wheels rolled over the small cement steps separating the house from the sidewalk, making a hollow, muffled sound. Immediately, the absence of the training wheels changed the bicycle's behavior. It was no longer a rigid object following a straight line. It now responded to every slight incline. Helena needed to keep a firm wrist on the handlebars so the blue frame wouldn't tip sideways. The metal weight demanded continuous attention. Lucas walked beside her. His steps were short and regular on the sidewalk stones. He watched the wheels spinning, observing how the front tire cut through the air and touched the ground in continuous motion. The sound of the freewheel on the rear wheel filled their silent walk. It was a quick metallic rhythmic click that accelerated when Helena walked faster and decelerated when she slowed. The sound became the soundtrack to their journey to the park. The street was quiet. The afternoon sun slowly descended, casting long shadows from trees onto the warm asphalt. The wind blew gently, stirring higher leaves and carrying a distant scent of dry earth and fallen leaves. Helena felt the sun's warmth on her shoulders as she guided the bicycle. The rubber grips absorbed the light sweat from her palms. She noticed how the bicycle seemed lighter without the extra weight of iron and plastic at the back. The front wheel passed over small sidewalk cracks, transmitting a gentle vibration that traveled up the metal fork and reached Helena's hands. They turned the corner. The neighborhood park opened before them. It was a wide area, bordered by old trees with thick trunks and broad canopies. The ground was a mix of packed earth and low grass, firm terrain, but not as hard as asphalt. It was the ideal spot. If there was a fall, the earth and grass would cushion the impact. The entrance gate was open. Helena pushed the bicycle into the park. The sound of the tires changed instantly. The hum over the smooth sidewalk gave way to a rougher noise, the sound of rubber crushing small grains of earth and dry leaves. They walked to a wide, straight pathway in the center of the park. There were no other people nearby, just the sound of a few birds in the trees and the rustling of leaves in the wind. Helena stopped the bicycle in the middle of the dirt path. She looked at the flat expanse ahead. Sunlight filtered through the branches, creating golden patches on the dark ground. The environment conveyed a sense of calm and isolation, a space prepared for what was about to happen. Lucas stopped beside the bicycle. He touched the seat with the fingertips. The texture of the synthetic leather was slightly warm from the sun during their walk. Helena lowered the kickstand with her foot. The metal spring made a dry snap as it retracted, and the rod folded up against the bicycle frame. Helena held the bicycle steady, keeping it perfectly upright. The weight of the frame now depended entirely on her hands. She looked at Lucas. The boy took the green helmet that was hanging from the handlebars.
Helena asked Lucas to get on the bicycle. The boy swung his right leg over the blue frame and settled onto the seat. The saddle's cushioning yielded slightly under his weight. Helena continued to hold the handlebars with one hand and rested the other on the back of the seat, feeling the material's seam under her palm. She asked Lucas to keep both feet on the ground. The soles of his sneakers touched the packed earth, scattering a few grains of dust. The seat height was exact. The boy's knees were slightly bent, allowing him to step firmly. The first step didn't involve the pedals. Helena explained in a calm voice, almost a whisper in the park's tranquil setting. She told him to walk while seated, pushing the ground with his feet, one at a time, as if the bicycle were just an extension of his legs. The goal was to feel the weight of the metal swaying from side to side. Lucas hesitated for a second. His hands tightened on the rubber grips. He gave the first push with his right foot. The bicycle moved a few centimeters forward. The front wheel turned slowly over the earth. Immediately, the bicycle leaned to the left side. Lucas's instinct was to tense his shoulders, but his left foot was there, touching the ground, and prevented the lean from continuing. Helena followed the movement closely. Her hand on the seat didn't exert force to hold the bicycle upright. It merely accompanied the sway, offering a tactile presence, an assurance that she was there. She felt the vibration of the metal frame with each step the boy took. Lucas gave another push, this time with his left foot. The bicycle moved a little more, and this time leaned to the right. His right foot found the earth and stabilized the whole. The movement was slow, dragging. The sound of his sneakers scraping on the dirt ground mingled with the soft whir of the chain spinning idly. Lucas's breathing was concentrated. He looked at the front wheel, trying to predict which way the wheel would turn. Lucas asked him to lift his gaze, to look to the end of the dirt path, to the distant trees. The boy's head lifted. The posture of his back changed a bit. They continued this seated walking for several meters. Push with the right, lean, touch the ground. Push with the left, lean, touch the ground. Gradually, the rhythm began to change. Lucas realized that if he gave a slightly stronger push, the bicycle would glide for a fraction of a second before needing the support of the other foot. In that brief instant of gliding, the bicycle became perfectly straight. The weight was distributed equally over both wheels. Helena's hand on the seat felt this change. The lateral tension decreased during these small moments of glide. The scent of earth stirred up by the boy's shoes hung low in the air. The sun continued to warm the surroundings, creating a comforting atmosphere. Lucas began to take longer steps. The sound of dragging feet diminished, replaced by the cleaner sound of rubber wheels crushing the dry grass. He was discovering the center of gravity, not through the explanation of words, but through his body's own response to the metal's movement. With each meter advanced on the pathway, the pauses with his feet in the air became milliseconds longer. Balance ceased to be a concept and began to become a physical sensation in the boy's hands and torso.
The bicycle stopped in the middle of the pathway. Lucas took a deep breath, slowly letting out the air. His face was slightly flushed from the effort and concentration. Helena knelt beside him and rotated the right pedal backward with her hand. The freewheel made its characteristic metallic sound until the plastic pedal was in its highest position, pointing forward, ready for the first push. The pedal surface had small grooves to prevent his shoe from slipping. Helena asked Lucas to place his right foot on the pedal. The sneaker fit onto the pedal. His left foot remained firm on the ground, supporting his weight. Helena shifted her position. She stood, slightly bent, with her left hand holding the middle of the handlebars and her right hand gripping the back of the seat firmly. The saddle leather was warm. She felt the muscles of her own arm prepare to support the movement. The air around them seemed to have stilled. At Helena's signal, Lucas pushed the right pedal down with force. The chain stretched instantly. The metal links engaged with the gear teeth with a dry, precise sound. The rear wheel was propelled forward, gripping the packed earth. The bicycle gave an initial lurch. Helena took the first quick step to match the speed. Lucas's left foot left the ground and found the rising left pedal. The pedaling began. It was uneven at first. The force applied on each side made the handlebars sway. Helena used her left hand to keep the front wheel aligned, correcting the small swerves the boy made. Her right hand on the seat bore much of the weight when the bicycle threatened to tip over. She walked quickly, almost trotting beside the bicycle. The sound of her hurried steps on the earth mingled with the soft creak of the spinning pedals and the hum of the tires. Helena's physical effort was constant. She felt the tension in her right shoulder, the pull of the boys and the metal machine's weight every time the balance faltered for a second. Her breathing began to deepen. The scent of crushed grass rose from the ground beneath her feet. She looked at Lucas's back, at his hands gripping the white grips tightly. The boy's knuckles were pale from the pressure. Gradually, the rhythm of Lucas's legs became more fluid. The circular motion of the pedal ceased to be a series of isolated pushes and became a continuous cycle. The chain spun without interruption. With constant speed, the bicycle began to gain its own stability. The physics of motion began to work in their favor. Helena felt the pressure in her right hand lessen. The bicycle no longer leaned so heavily to the sides. It was holding itself upright through inertia. They covered a long distance like this, united by movement. The mother running beside, holding the seat and handlebars, the son pedaling with his eyes fixed on the path ahead. The wind generated by their speed hit Helena's face, cooling the sweat that was beginning to form on her forehead. The sound of the park faded, replaced only by the mechanical whir of the bicycle and their measured breathing. The front tire cut through the shadow line of the trees and entered the sunlit patches in a hypnotic rhythm. The feeling was of construction, of pieces fitting together. The boy was generating the force, and the mother was providing direction and security. The movement existed, continuous and real, sustained by their shared effort on the flat earth.
The end of the pathway was approaching. Helena gently squeezed the handbrake. The rubber pads touched the metal rim of the front wheel with a soft hiss. The bicycle lost speed until it stopped completely. Lucas placed both feet on the ground, breathless but with sparkling eyes. They turned around, maneuvering the heavy metal frame over the earth, pointing the front wheel back toward the long path they had come from. The sunlight now hit their backs, illuminating the fine dust that floated in the air just above the ground. Helena positioned the right pedal again. She resumed her stance beside the bicycle, her hand on the seat, her hand on the handlebars. Lucas gave the first strong push. The chain clacked, the wheel spun, and they began to move. Helena's trot resumed. The sound of the tires on the earth once again filled the space. The speed stabilized faster this time. The circular movement of the boy's legs was more natural, less tense. Helena felt the lightness in the bicycle frame. The metal frame was aligned, cutting through the air in a straight line. She made a silent decision. Maintaining the rhythm of her run, she opened the fingers of her left hand, releasing the handlebars. Her arm dropped to her side. Now only her right hand held the back of the seat. Lucas didn't notice. He continued pedaling, keeping the front wheel straight on his own. The direction was now his. They advanced a few more meters. Helena's breathing kept pace with the sound of the chain. The bicycle was stable. The weight leaned neither to the left nor to the right. The center had been found. With a smooth, continuous movement, Helena loosened the grip of her right hand. She did not remove her hand from the seat, but she stopped holding it. Her fingers merely brushed the synthetic leather, feeling the vibration of the movement without exerting any influence on the balance. For 2 seconds, Lucas pedaled completely alone, sustained only by his own speed. The bicycle glided over the earth with a newfound lightness. The sound seemed to change, becoming cleaner, without the interference of corrected weight. Then a small stone in the path deviated the front wheel a millimeter. The handlebars trembled. Lucas's instinct was to stop pedaling. The absence of driving force broke the gyroscopic effect. The bicycle leaned sharply to the left. Helena's hand, which was millimeters away, instantly closed around the seat. She pulled the metal frame back to the center with firmness. The weight of the bicycle and the boy pressed on her arm, but the fall was avoided. Lucas placed his foot on the ground, surprised by the sudden loss of balance.
The tire dragged a little earth before stopping. Helena spoke in a low, steady tone. She explained that the secret was not to stop pedaling. The movement of his legs was what kept the bicycle upright. There was no frustration in the air, just the recognition of a physical fact. The scent of dust raised by the braking reached their noses. They started again. Pedal up, push, run. The speed established itself. Helena released the handlebars. Her hand on the seat loosened its grip. The bicycle floated again. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Lucas kept pedaling. The wheel spun. The slight oscillation to the right was corrected by a subtle movement of the boy's body. He was feeling the balance. Helena ran alongside, her fingers just touching the seat, ready to intervene, but allowing the suspension of touch to last longer and longer. Those brief moments of release were small, silent victories, fragments of independence woven by the continuous sound of the wheels on the park's earth.
The pathway seemed longer now. The afternoon air began to cool slightly, bringing a gentle breeze that stirred the tipuana leaves above them. The packed earth ground was marked by a thin, continuous line left by the bicycle tires from previous attempts. Helena prepared the pedal once more. Her hand on the seat was damp with sweat. The synthetic leather under her fingers seemed to have absorbed the heat of the effort. Lucas took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the flat horizon of the path. The tension in his shoulders had lessened. His body seemed to have accepted the bicycle's geometry. The initial push was strong and clean. His shoe pressed the pedal. The chain pulled the rear gear without hesitation. The bicycle sprang forward, gaining speed quickly. Helena began to run. Her shoes struck the earth at an accelerated pace. Her left hand no longer touched the handlebars. Her right hand held the seat, but the resistance was minimal. The bicycle cut through the air in a perfect straight line. The hum of the tires over the fine earth was the only constant sound. The speed increased. The rotation of Lucas's pedals found an ideal cadence. Centrifugal force pulled at the wheels, keeping the metal frame rigid and vertical. Helena felt that the bicycle no longer needed her. The metal didn't lean to either side. The vibration that rose through the seat was merely the reading of the terrain, not a cry for help. With a fluid movement, without altering the rhythm of her run, Helena opened her right hand. Her fingers moved away from the synthetic leather. Her arm slowly dropped to her side. She said nothing. The silence of her action was fundamental. Lucas continued pedaling. The bicycle moved forward, 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters. The space between Helena's hand and the bicycle seat began to grow. Helena gradually slowed her steps. The accelerated trot turned into a light run, then a brisk walk, until her feet stopped completely on the loose earth. The bicycle continued. The boy was alone. His legs rose and fell in a mechanical and perfect motion. The blue frame of the bicycle swayed millimeters to the left and right with each pedal stroke, a natural balance that compensated for the applied force, keeping the center of gravity exactly over the wheels. The sound of the spinning chain began to recede. The noise of the tires crushing the dry earth grew fainter as the distance increased. Helena stood still in the middle of the path, watching. The image of her son moving away, balanced on 2 thin wheels, had an absolute clarity. The wind hit her face, drying the sweat from her forehead. Her breathing, previously labored, began to slow, finding a calm rhythm. She saw Lucas's straight back, the green helmet gleaming under the sunlight that passed through the branches.
The bicycle seemed to glide effortlessly. The friction with the ground, the weight of the metal, gravity, all had been mastered by the continuous movement of those legs. The initial imbalance, the rigidity of the plastic training wheels in the garage, all of it had vanished. There, on the flat expanse of the park, physics and confidence had met. The front wheel devoured the distance, and the bicycle moved forward, free and self-sufficient, cutting through the afternoon air. The bicycle was now dozens of meters away. Lucas realized that the sound of his mother's steps had disappeared. He didn't look back. The instinct to keep his eyes on the path ahead prevailed. The sensation of lightness was complete. The handlebars responded to every slight touch of his hands, not with the heavy resistance from before, but with a docile fluidity. The air hit his face, bringing the fresh scent of grass and earth. The park opened around him, no longer as a challenge to be overcome, but as a space to be traversed. He stopped pedaling for a moment. His legs became still, his feet parallel on the pedals. The rear freewheel took over the sound, emitting a quick, continuous metallic hum as the wheel spun freely. The bicycle continued to advance by inertia, cutting through the wind. He felt the wind in his ears, a sensation of pure speed, sustained only by the physics he had just mastered. Balance no longer required conscious effort. His body made the necessary micro-corrections automatically. Slowly, he leaned his body and the handlebars to the left. The bicycle obeyed, leaving the straight line and beginning a wide, smooth curve. The front tire drew a perfect arc in the packed earth. The lean made him feel the force of the curve, pulling him slightly outward, but the tires maintained their grip on the firm ground. He completed the semicircle and began pedaling again, pointing the bicycle back in the direction he had come from. Helena remained standing in the same spot. The late afternoon light had changed. The sun was lower, painting the tree leaves with a dark golden hue. The trunk shadows stretched across the dirt ground, creating long, dark streaks that Lucas crossed with the bicycle. She watched Lucas approaching. His posture had changed completely since the first attempt in the garage. His shoulders were relaxed. His arms were not rigid, trying to force direction. They followed the natural movement of the handlebars. His face under the green helmet was calm, with an expression of tranquil concentration. The bicycle grew in Helena's vision as Lucas approached. The sound of the tires crushing the small dry leaves and path stones became clear again. The hum of the freewheel alternated with the soft creak of the chain when he resumed pedaling. The scent of fine dust raised by the wheels hung in the still air of the pathway. He passed Helena in a straight line. The wind from his movement gently displaced her hair. She didn't extend her hand, didn't make a move to hold the seat. The space between them was filled only by the sound of moving metal and displaced air. Lucas continued pedaling to the start of the pathway, made another wide curve safely, and began to return. Helena slowly crossed her arms. The park around her seemed to have absorbed the tranquility of that moment. The muscular tension from the runs and holds on the seat had vanished from her arms and back. What remained was a feeling of sufficiency. The tool had been adjusted, the effort had been made, and the result was there, visible and concrete, spinning in uninterrupted circles beneath the old trees. The boy and the machine were now one, moving through space with a simple, newfound grace. The afternoon had fulfilled its promise.
The sun touched the line of rooftops of the houses around the park. The light lost its intensity, replaced by a soft orange glow that announced the onset of dusk. The air cooled noticeably. The breeze now carried the scent of dampness from the leaves that began to collect the night's dew. Elena made a signal with her hand. Lucas squeezed the brake levers. The bicycle gradually slowed until it stopped beside her. The front tire pushed a small mound of earth before becoming still. The boy put both feet on the ground, breathing deeply, his chest rising and falling beneath his t-shirt. Elena smiled slightly, a silent gesture of recognition. She didn't take the handlebars. Lucas dismounted from the seat, swinging his leg over the blue frame. He held the rubber grips himself. The walk back began. This time, it was the boy who pushed the bicycle. The metal seemed no longer an awkward weight. He kept the frame slightly tilted towards him, balancing it with ease as they walked side by side toward the park gate. The sound of the freewheel clicking slowly accompanied them along the dirt path, then over the exit gravel, until they reached the smooth asphalt of the street. The street was steeped in the quietness of early evening. The yellow lights of the lampposts began to flicker on one by one, casting circles of light onto the sidewalks. Calm steps, the sound of the wheels, the fresh air. The distance to the house seemed shorter. They reached the small cement step. Lucas lifted the front wheel with a firm pull on the handlebars, making the tire pass over the obstacle, and the rear wheel followed with a dull thud. The garage was dark. Elena switched on the light. The rectangular space was illuminated. In the corner, near the wooden shelf, the two small white plastic wheels remained on the ground, exactly where they had been left hours earlier. Lucas pushed the bicycle to the back of the garage. With a practical movement of his foot, he lowered the metal kickstand. The spring clicked. He tilted the blue frame until the rod touched the cement floor and supported its weight. The bicycle stood still, resting on its own wheels, at peace. Elena watched the scene for a moment, feeling the fresh air of the garage and the familiar scent of dust and oil. Silence settled in the space, filled only by the sound of their calm breathing. The work was done. The day was over.